Okay, so I'm going to do a quick sound check for those of you who are online. When I call out your name, you can just say hello. Lakshman Patel.
Hi.
Thank you. Dylan.
Hi there. Good evening.
Thank you. Adam.
Good evening.
Great. Walter.
Hello.
Thank you. And 011. Zero one one. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. And can you identify yourself as well, please?
Ravi Nagodra
Okay.
for 2 Livingston Avenue.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so I'll start the recording as well, and we can go ahead and get started.
Recording in progress.
Okay, welcome everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is a hearing of the Committee of Adjustment for the Town of Grimsby. I'm going to first introduce the committee members and staff. So committee members present this evening are Dan Collins to my right. Hi, Dan. Dylan Bailey online. Hi, Dylan. Adam Mottershead also online. Hi, Adam. And Fabia Billing to my far right. Hi, Fabia. And myself, Kevin Antonitis. Staff members present this evening are Walter Basic online, Assistant Director of Planning, and Dalhara Abi-Wardeen, Administrative Coordinator to my left here. So just a few notes about live streaming. Members of the public are advised that our meetings are live streamed by the Town of Grimsby. Individuals and media may be audibly and or visually recorded during this meeting. As a reminder, all electronic devices are to be in silent mode during our committee meeting. Just regarding the meeting procedures themselves, the purpose of the application and any relative correspondence will be heard, following which the applicant will be given the opportunity to address the application. Any person concerned with the application will then be given an opportunity to speak. At the conclusion of the discussion, the committee will render a decision and advise of any applicable conditions. Copies of decisions will be mailed to the applicant or agent and to any other person who files a written request. And to do so, please email Dahara, Secretary Treasurer at cao@grimsby.ca. The applicant, the Town of Grimsby, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, specified persons and certain public bodies have the right to appeal either the decision itself or the conditions of consent to the Ontario Land Tribunal, OLT, within 20 days of the date of giving notice under Section 17 is completed for consent, and also within 20 days for a decision of minor variance application. Specified persons and certain public bodies include public utilities, but do not include an individual or community association. Everyone present will be given an opportunity to comment on the applications being heard. Please address your comments and questions through the chair. Each participant will be provided 5 minutes to speak. Each participant may speak only once unless requested or asked to do so again. If you hear your comment presented by someone else, please do not duplicate the remarks. When you're called, we ask that you state your name and address for the record. Agencies commenting on applications may request certain conditions be imposed. Voicing objections to these conditions will not adversely affect the committee's decision. All members of the committee have viewed the properties on the agenda tonight and are familiar with the lands that are subject to the applications. Disclosure of any pecuniary interest. Do any members of the committee have a pecuniary interest with respect to the applications that are before us this evening? No, and I have none as well. There's no request for withdrawal this evening, as I understand. So the first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the previous meeting, which was held on June 20th. The committee members had the opportunity to review the minutes. Are there any questions or comments regarding the minutes? No? If not, then do I have a mover and a seconder? I'll move. Dan? Second? Fabia? Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye or raise their hand. Opposed, if any. Was carried. And then the first application this evening then for minor variance is A1023 21 Patton Street. Tara?
Thank you. Okay, so the intent for 21 Patton Street, application number A1023, is to facilitate the construction of an attached garage with living space to permit a dwelling to be 15.41 meters from the railway right-of-way, whereas 30 meters is required, and to permit a garage width of 122%, that is 12.09 meters of the total building width, whereas 50% of the total building width is permitted. And that's an image of the site plan that was circulated in the notice of hearing as well. And that's a picture of the neighborhood for context. Those are the current conditions of the site. And this is what is proposed. And as far as correspondence, we have received correspondence from these agencies and a few conditions, actually just one condition for this application by the Niagara region, and this is a condition for the other applications as well. So I will just read this once for this application and then just mention it for the following applications. That the owner be advised of the following advisory clause. Should deeply buried archaeological remains or resources be found during construction activities, all activities impacting archaeological resources must cease immediately, and the proponent must notify the Archaeology Programs Unit of the Ministry of Citizenship and Multiculturalism and contact a licensed archaeologist to carry out an archaeological assessment in accordance with Ontario Heritage Act and the standards and guidelines for consultant archaeologists. In the event that human remains are encountered during construction, all activities must cease immediately, and the local police, as well as the Cemeteries Regulation Unit of the Ministry of Public and Business Services, must be contacted. In situations where human remains are associated with archaeological resources, the Ministry of Citizenship and Multiculturalism should also be notified to ensure that the site is not subject to unlicensed alterations, which would be a contravention of the Ontario Heritage Act. Okay, and that's it from me. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
All right, is the owner or their representative here this evening or online? Did you wish to come forward to the mic and elaborate a little bit or address any of the comments or questions you've heard? We just get your name and address, sorry. For the
Serge, 21 Patton Street. So the house was built in 1921, so I think anything that's going to be added to it will require a minor variance. We're just building a 3-car garage with a living space up top for my parents to move in, and that's really all there is to it. I think all the folks or parties that were asked to respond responded in favor, and based on that, I'll keep my comments short unless there's any questions.
Thank you. I'll open up to the committee members first if they have any questions for the owner. Dylan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe not necessarily through the owner, but just I was looking at the comments received in Public Works. I mentioned a lot grading plan. Does that need to be a condition on the approval, or is that done as part of the building permit?
If I may, it's been provided, so I'm not sure if that question even needs a response.
I'll let Walter comment if he wishes. Walter? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Chair. It is normally a requirement of the building permit application, so it's not necessary as a condition of the minor variance.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this application at all? Or you're waiting for your turn? If not, then do I have a motion and a seconder? And if you could just read the motion and any conditions attached or abbreviate if we've read them already through the minutes, and then the reasons for the approval or denial or deferral. Dan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I find it resolved that minor variance application A1023 by Surgeon Pralissa sorry if I pronounced that wrong.
Good enough.
Thank you. Ashley Aaron Wilson for 21 Patton Street to permit a dwelling to be 15.41 meters from the railway right-of-way, whereas 30 meters is required to permit a garage width of 122% or 12.09 meters of the total building width, whereas 50% of the total building width is permitted. I move that it be approved with conditions, and the only condition is the advisory clause that Dilhara has read already.
Thank you. Seconder? Dylan? Any further discussion on the motion with the condition? If not, then do I have all those in favor say aye, or raise their hand, I should say? And opposed, if any? Was carried. So there is a 20-day appeal period before it becomes final and binding. All right, thank you for coming out. You too. Okay, the next application is a 1723 229 Hysert Road. I think this is a return of one from last meeting, if I recall. Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, so the purpose of the application for 229 Hysert Road is to facilitate the construction of a detached accessory building, to permit a maximum lot coverage of 12.25%, whereas 7.5% is permitted, to permit a maximum accessory building lot coverage of 8.75%, whereas 5% is permitted, to permit a minimum accessory building rear yard setback of 1.54 meters, whereas 3 meters is required, to permit a minimum accessory building interior side yard setback of 1.54 meters, whereas 3 meters is required, and to permit a maximum accessory building height to midpoint of the peak of 4.71 meters, whereas 4.5 meters is permitted. And this is an image of the site plan, which was submitted with the notice of hearing as well. And that's an image of the neighborhood for context. These are the current conditions of the site. And this is what's proposed, the building. And once again, we received correspondence from these agencies, and there are 2 conditions, one of them from Public Works and the other from the region. So I will read out the condition from Public Works right now. That is, the town staff will require a lot grading and drainage plan demonstrating that stormwater runoff will not negatively impact nor rely upon neighboring properties. And the second condition is by the region, the one that I read out previously for the previous application about the buried archaeological remains. And thank you, that's it for me.
Thank you. The owner or the representative here this evening, come on forward if you'd like to, elaborate if. No, that's all right.
Mike Swardens, 229 Hysert Road. Basically, I bought the place about 8 years ago. There's about 4,200 square feet of roof there now as an accessory building. I want to put up about 3,500 square feet. We'll make it smaller in the exact same footprint. I want to try and maintain the 1.54 from the property line, so that I've done my Niagara region septic analysis, and they require that so that I have a new place for a new septic bed down the road, if and when I require one. And their proposal is to put it beside the existing, or the new proposed building, which is the existing building. I also had Chris Adama do a septic design on that, so there's an approved design for the new septic bed if and when I need one. He's thinking 15 to 20 years will be when a septic bed will be required. And yeah, we basically got a lot of toys, and I want to keep them under a roof. And the existing building right now is What appears what I bought was, there's an L-shaped barn in the back, which was, I think, built with the house in 1987. I think it's around probably 1,600 square feet. It's completely dilapidated. It's like a pole barn, 4x4 posts. The walls are below grade, so they're completely rotted off. There's raccoon holes in it. I can't keep the animals out of it anymore. It's completely falling down. I won't even let the kids near it. And then the front of the building has had a 60 by 25 GGS galvanized greenhouse attached to it from the previous owner. And with a lean-to on it. None of these, I believe, have permits. They were just built. And then there was also an add-on to the back of the existing barn, which totaled 4,200 square feet. So I just want to basically take everything down, probably sell the greenhouse as a kit because there's nothing wrong with it. It's galvanized steel, it just bolts together. And yeah, put up a slightly smaller building that looks a little more better for the neighbors and keep my stuff out of the weather. It's kind of where I'm at.
All right, thank you. So you're basically replacing what's there with a smaller building?
Just a little bit smaller.
Okay. Questions from the committee members first?
I have no questions.
Maybe? Dan? Yep.
Yeah, thanks. It just says, I just want to confirm, it said in the notes from the planning department, therefore, based on the information submitted, staff has no objections to the proposed detached accessory building from a private servicing perspective, provided that it contains no plumbing or living space. Can you just confirm no? Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this or online? No? If not, then do I have a motion or mover and a seconder on the application request? Adam, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just let me switch screens 1 second.
Sorry, we can't hear you, Adam.
Hear me now? Okay, sorry. Resolved that minor variance A17-23 by Michael Sweardens for 229 Hysert Road to permit a maximum lot coverage of 12.25%, whereas 7.5% is permitted, to permit a maximum accessory building lot coverage of 8.75%, whereas 5% is permitted, to permit a minimum accessory building rear yard setback of 1.54 meters, whereas 3 meters is required, to permit a minimum accessory building interior side yard setback of 1.54 meters, whereas 3 meters is required, and to permit a maximum accessory building height to midpoint at peak of 4.7 meters, whereas 4.5 meters is permitted, be approved with conditions. And the conditions are town staff will require a lot grading and drainage plan demonstrating that the stormwater runoff will not negatively impact nor rely upon neighboring properties, and the advisory clause, which was previously mentioned by the Secretary Treasurer.
Thank you. A seconder on that? Dylan? Oh, sorry, Walter. I don't see his hand, but apparently he wants to say something. Walter? Okay, never mind. False alarm. Okay.
Wait, no, sorry.
Sorry, Dylan is a seconder. Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor say aye or raise their hand. Opposed, if any, was carried. Thank you very much. Again, there's a 20-day appeal period before it becomes final and binding. Thank you for attending. Okay, and then the third application, the last one this evening, is A1923 2 Livingston Avenue in Grimsby. Dahara?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so the purpose of this application is to facilitate the construction of a two-story commercial building with 21 parking spaces, to permit a minimum accessible parking space width of 2.75 meters and 3.4 meters with a shared 1.5 meter access aisle, whereas 4.5 meters is required, to permit an entrance exit within a minimum 5.4 meters of another entrance or exit measured along the street line, whereas a minimum of 9 meters is required, to permit the front wall of the building to occupy a minimum 47% or 15.75 meters of the exterior lot line, whereas 50% is required. This is an image of the site plan that was submitted with the notice of hearing. This is an image of the neighborhood for context. These are the current conditions of the site. And this is what's proposed. These sketches are courtesy of the site plan application that has been in for this address. And correspondence was received from these agencies. We have 3 conditions, which I will read out now. Condition number 1, all accessible parking spaces must be in accordance with ORED 191/11 Integrated Accessibility Standards. 80.34 off-street parking facilities must provide the following 2 types of parking spaces for the use of persons with disabilities. Type A, a wider parking space which has a minimum width of 3,400 millimeters and signage that identifies the space as van accessible. Type B, a standard parking space which has a minimum width of 2,400 millimeters or Regulation 413/12 S6. And 80.35, number 1, access aisles, that is the space between parking spaces that allows persons with disabilities to get in and out of their vehicles, must be provided for all parking spaces for the use of persons with disabilities in off-street parking facilities. 80.35, number 2, access aisles may be shared by 2 parking spaces for the use of persons with disabilities in an off-street parking facility and must meet the following requirements. They must have a minimum width of 1,500 millimeters. They must extend the full length of the parking space. They must be marked with high tonal contrast diagonal lines, which discourages parking in them, where the surface is asphalt, concrete or some other hard surface. Condition number 2, prepare traffic impact study demonstrating acceptable traffic flow and minimized adverse effects on adjacent properties and the neighborhood on Patton Street. And condition number 3 is by the region, the same one that I read for the other 2 applications with regards to archaeological remains and resources. That's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the owner or the agent here? Would you like to come forward at all and elaborate or comment on the proposed conditions?
Myself, Dakshesh Patel. We are planning to develop this commercial property with a 2-story building, and there are like 3 concerns like parking, disability parking, that we have put it as per Ontario disability parking requirement, and then there is only 1 entry exit, so there was a variance on that entry exit, and then building length. It was a gas station before, but as per the new zoning and the new regulations, the building has been pushed back, and then we have been short like on the side of side wall of the property. So that's a concern we have.
Thank you. Any Walter has his hand up. Walter, did you wish to elaborate or?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair. I just want to comment on a couple of the conditions, the accessible parking conditions. I don't believe are necessary. We will address that through site plan control, just to ensure that parking spaces as depicted on the submitted plan with the application will be incorporated into the site plan. The spaces that are identified on the submitted plan do meet all of the requirements that are identified in that 1 condition. So it's my opinion that that condition is not necessary. The second condition I'd like to speak to is the transportation impact study. Since the Public Works Department has indicated that they do not have any objections to the location of the proposed entrance relative to the neighboring entrance to the north, which is by a one-way out access point. I would like to withdraw the request for the transportation impact study.
Thank you. I was going to make a comment about that. I found it a little onerous for a little two-story mixed-use building in the downtown core, but I'm glad you withdrew it. So I won't have to argue that point then, I guess. Are there any other questions or comments from staff or the committee members? So both, the first two are redundant, is that what you're saying? Just to summarize, as long as they meet site plan, they're going to meet the accessibility requirements?
Sorry, I had myself on mute. Yes, the plan that's been submitted does meet the requirements of AODA, and as described also by the requested condition by the Public Works Department. So we will ensure through the site plan approval process that those parking spaces do meet the requirements of of those standards. And also a request a withdrawal of the transportation impact study.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that clarification. Any questions from the committee members then? No, none, and no one in the audience or online that would like to comment? I think last time you were here, the neighbors were concerned about a few things, so obviously that's been resolved. Yeah, good. Motion then on this application with the two requested conditions being removed, the third remaining, I guess, if I could suggest that, but if anybody would like to make a motion and a seconder? Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
After that condition of transportation study, do we need to come to the variance,
No, he's requesting that we remove that condition, so it's no longer required.
Okay.
And then if you meet the site plan, or I guess if you meet the site plan process, they'll make sure that you meet the accessibility parking spaces, so that that condition is also being removed from a condition. So it's really only the archaeological one that would remain, which is this pretty standard condition that we attach.
Okay, thank you.
Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I find it resolved that minor variance application A1923 by 2793581 Ontario Inc. In care of Dakesh Patel for 2 Livingston Avenue to permit a minimum accessible parking space width of 2.75 and 3.4 meters with a shared 1.5 meter access aisle, whereas 4.5 meters is required, to permit an entrance exit within a minimum 5.4 meter of another entrance exit measured along the street line, whereas a minimum of 9 meters is required, and to permit the front wall of the building to occupy a minimum of 47% or 15.75 meter of the exterior lot line, whereas 50% is required. And I move that it be approved with only one condition, and that condition is the advisory clause that Delhara has read out at the beginning of the meeting.
Thank you. A seconder? Dylan? Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion with the amended only one condition? If not, then all in favor say aye or raise their hand. Opposed, if any, was carried. Okay, so it's been changed to just one condition, and then there's a 20-day appeal period before it becomes final and binding. So thank you again for cooperating with the town staff and making it work. It's been a few months, I guess, but thank you again. Good night.
Thank you.
And I believe that's all the applications we have this evening, right? Is there any other further business?
No further business.
None? Okay. I guess the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Have a good evening.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Dave?
you know that property?
I'm not
on
fast,
Patton
I'm not
Street?
fast enough to look this way for a second or so.
Recording stopped.
That's okay. That property on Patton Street is quite an interesting street.